Evening all, it's the Advent calendar time. It's the first of the month, and as I look out my window, I see snow falling. I see a red-breasted robin fluttering about. I don't actually. I'm looking out the window and seeing drizzle and grey, and I think that robin just got eaten by a cat. But we are going to do an Advent calendar, a gaming Advent calendar, and where better to start than Half-Life 2? Now, there's a reason I picked this game, and we'll come to that in just a moment. But the premise here is we wanted to maybe just play a completely different game that we would never maybe show on the channel before. Maybe an older game, maybe a retro game, maybe an indie game, maybe a AAA game that just isn't our kind of cup of tea. So if you have any suggestions, please tell us. We do have a full list up to the Christmas day, but we're happy to change it if somebody comes up with an absolute screamer of a game. So yeah, post in the comments if you have a particular favourite. But the purpose of this is to discuss gaming. It's certainly to discuss, kind of looking at some old classics, and let's get started. So Half-Life is probably the reason I chose it first is because it's kind of like it's the moment in my gaming life where I went from being a very casual gamer to all of a sudden being immersed completely into a world. And I think this is something Valve, and particularly Gabe Newell, really have done well in pretty much the whole Valve series of games, is they understand the environment by which the game is being played. So for example, in Half-Life, in the first Half-Life, it's all about an experiment that goes wrong and ending up with this kind of cataclysmic event, which brings those Vortican weird creatures around, as you can see. These guys, ooh, hello, a bit close. But those are the guys, obviously, that are the baddies in the first one, and they become your allies, because they're slaves, basically. Anyway, long story short, Gabe Newell, I think, really designs games with that kind of feeling of apocalyptic moments happening. So, particularly with this world, Half-Life 2 was a critical success to me because it had such a feel that the world was decaying, it was dying, it was oppressed, it was being trodden down. And it wasn't just by the dialogue or the kind of action in the game, it was done through the implication of the environments around it. Left 4 Dead 2 does this beautifully as well, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, because it's all, I mean, he actually read up on the Spanish flu when Gabe Newell, when he wrote that game, and that's the beauty of it, because really he has captured a kind of society in despair and panic and decay in that game too. So I think games like this really are, exceptional. And if you've never played Half-Life 2, then where the hell have you been? Maybe you're a console chap and you just never get a chance. This is probably, if you ever do get a PC, any PC in the world will run this game now. So it's so old, but it still looks pretty good, right? You can quite honestly run this on on a PC at work or school, to be honest with you, and it's that crap now in terms of its specs. But the game is so exceptional. So I highly recommend it if you've never played before. It really is. It's like probably one of the first kind of walk-through epic storylines that really did feel like you're watching or playing a film. Do you know what I mean? And I think this one just aced it perfectly. So, and let's talk about that. So I think, the reality of Half-Life 2 and games like this is that they do generally start to create a bit of a genre for themselves, because at the time, I mean, this is an FPS effectively, but you could never compare this to Metal Gear Solid or something like that. Well, probably a bad example, but this game really does stand alone, and there's a few others like it. I think, again, the graphics at the time were pretty exceptional as well. The gameplay was good. It was a very kind of linear storyline, so I think today it wouldn't probably do as well today, because people do expect certain sandbox elements. But again, that's probably an interesting kind of movement of the industry away from, I guess, your kind of rail shooter like this, to a much more kind of immersive situation. So if you've ever played Prototype or something like that, very similar to that. So let's just talk about when I first kind of encountered Half-Life. I mean, my first interaction with it was, I usually would not play. I was not a kind of hardcore gamer back then. I would play games because I enjoyed playing games. I would enjoy sort of like stuff on, the old, gaming sort of systems. Like I had a Super Nintendo, I had a Sega Mega Drive, etc. But I was never that kind of mad about them until I played probably Half-Life 1. And I think something clicked. I think Half-Life 1 was also the first time that I actually used mouse and keyboard. I know it's almost as I sit here and think about it, it's almost kind of inconceivable to think that I didn't use mouse and keyboard like I'm using it here. I actually would use the keys and, sort of, page up, page down to lift the reticule up and down. It was because Quake and Doom and that Doom had set very much a kind of a requirement not to need to aim up and down. It's such a stupid thing, but I tell you what, it was massive because all of a sudden I was basically playing a game with my mouse and aiming like you see here, and it really was a revelation to me. I know it's so stupid, but I think today we take it for granted how far games have really come. The thing about Half-Life 2 as well, I would say, that was just really surprising at the time was the ragdoll effects. Now, there had been ragdoll in many, many other games for a long time, in fact, but I think Half-Life 2 was the one that really brought it to life. So as you see, when you shoot someone, their body crumples. When you explode something near somebody, their body literally cartwheels away, and it was just exceptional. I think that was, there were so many kind of things that were drawn together with Half-Life 2 that just really defined probably the next 10 years of gaming, because I think certainly this game as I'm playing it now is old, and yet it doesn't feel old. I'm still actually having a real blast playing it. It looks okay, it feels good. The mechanics of it have also never really been rivaled. So you'll see in a moment the gravity gun. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're in for a treat. The whole game was just enriched by this wonderful mechanic of the gravity gun, which has been copied a million times over now. I mean, quite frankly, it's been. I think you can get so many games now where the gravity gun is so much implied but never kind of respected and honoured. That it came from this game, and I think it is an odd kind of situation to think that this was where it kind of began. I think also a lot of the time you find that games like this, they really do have incredible playability in them as well. So as I was recording this footage, I was kind of gobsmacked to see that almost 2 hours had passed, and I was literally just playing various levels. I was just dipping my toe back into it, but I remembered the action and the excitement. And this is just episode 1. This is Half-Life 2. So, there's Half-Life 1, there's Half-Life 2, there's episode, I think, 1, 2, and I want to say that's it, because episode 3 is what everyone's waiting for. Feel I got that right. Everyone's kind of waiting for Half-Life 3, and I think this has become a bit of a gaming joke, because, literally people will expect the Half-Life 3 to be the best game ever made, and I think the sad part of it is it probably won't be. It will probably be, I think, quite good, but it won't be certainly the striding behemoth that we expect it maybe to be. So we're just kind of carrying on our jaunt, and I think the thing that again really surprised me about this game was just again how kind of clever it was in terms of the different weapons and certainly the environment. So here we have actually a puzzle that's actually a force field there, and I have to figure out how to take that puzzle, that force field down. All you need to do is follow the cable, and you can see that there's something plugged in on the other side of that building. And I think this was certainly something that I respect Half-Life 4 probably more than any other game out there. Was its puzzles, while simple, were actually quite enjoyable, and the story, it's funny really, it's kind of like a children's party is this game. It's certainly not the hardest shooter you've ever played, because the weapons, as you can see from that, are flipping potent, they're very good. But hello, that's not good. So what I think I find is that it's more of an experience than a game, and so few games have ever done that right. It's always been a little bit sort of weird, a little bit different in the way that they try and convey certainly the story, etc. Very few get it right. That it's not necessarily about being the best shooter in the world. It's about enjoying a story and experience. And I think Valve have got that perfectly. Left 4 Dead 2, Left 4 Dead 1, etc. They're all great examples of that. Oh, just died there. And this was me just trying to play with the guys, get a little bit of grenade action going. But this is the beauty of the game as well, is that the mechanics, all of a sudden you can actually catch grenades mid throw. You can pick up explosives. The gravity gun really did change this whole game, and you can see I'm using the scenery as a thing to kind of deal with people. Oh, missed him. There we go. Bang in the still laugh at the explosives in this. And I think this is something really oh my god, did you see that? I think this is something to really kind of bear in mind. And I think the reason, again, just to kind of go all the way back to the beginning of why we're doing this advent calendar, is to almost refresh our palette a little bit. We do generally tend to stick with the same games, and I mean we, the royal we, as in all of us, we generally do try and stick to the games that we're comfortable with, and I think it's worth just dipping your toe into something that you've not played for a while, just to remind yourself how good it is. And I think you'll find there's a lot of very good games out there that maybe you've missed that are probably so cheap now that, you know, you could buy. I mean, I think Half-Life is like £2 on Steam now. I think with all of the packs with it, I believe. Terraria, which is a game I love, and I'm about to do a series on that, is £1.50 on Steam right now. And seriously, that will give you months of entertainment. It's just, you know, that again, I cite the calculation of how much money do you pay versus how much is it going to entertain you. Half-Life 2 will entertain you probably for like a week, because there's a lot there to do. Unless you're an absolute kind of speedrunner, you know, it will take you a week to complete. And it will cost you probably £5 for everything, maybe less, and it will be probably the most enjoyable gaming experience you've had for a while, because the story is very good. The mechanics are very good. There's a lot there to enjoy. I think as well, you have to look at some of these old games to really understand what you can kind of see the difference between developers now as well, because a lot of the time we're seeing, I mean, things like Battlefield 4 and Call of Duty, etc. It's not necessarily ever been about making the best game anymore, because those two seem to have this kind of, massive rumble, because they're separate companies. They're obviously fighting for the same market, and they want to be the top dog, and therefore you end up with these kind of warring games that the reality is that their war is actually detracting from the production of both, because they're just competing with each other. Whereas Valve games generally don't come out that often, because they take their time to make them. They really do test them, I would say, to make sure that they're both, physically and technically and also commercially going to work. And I think too, a lot of games companies could learn from that, because it's not necessarily about producing, I mean, obviously Valve are obviously a hugely rich company and they've done the right things, but it has more so been about quality over speed. And I think some game companies could really learn from that, because too many times I think people just see it as not an art. I know I'm getting a bit metaphysical now, but I see gaming as much an art as film production, movie making, etc. And I honestly stand by that, because to me, a game is a conveyed series of events, which is exactly what a movie is. The only difference is that you have the ability to direct the output. Now, you don't obviously have the full ability, because it could be a rail shooter, it could be something else. Oh, fell off the link. But I think games really do become, I think, part of, and I think it's only going to get more and more, is that as the old guard and the old people who don't understand games die, I don't mix my words, they will then start to move away, and then you'll get people from the younger generations coming through who are aware of games and understand them as a very viable format. And I think you're seeing that more and more, because people are realizing that games are actually a quite profitable things. GTA 5 has made a substantial amount of money, Skyrim, etc. So I think, in conclusion, I think Half-Life 2 is an exceptionally good game. If you've never played it, please do. If you do own it, maybe give it a blast for half an hour, and I think you'll find that it's brilliant. So there we go, little Christmassy lights. Hope you enjoyed that. We will write something on this, so please keep checking our website. And that was Advent Calendar number 1. You can expect one of these every day right up until Christmas, and then on Christmas we'll do something a little bit special. But there we go. Hope you enjoyed that. Cue the sleigh bells.